speaking of the Broncos, they won, but it feels like they lost. Mm-hmm. They beat the Texans 16-9, but I thought MDS was joking when he said that the home crowd was counting down the play clock like it was a shot clock in basketball to help the Broncos get their plays off. Now, it may have been kind of passive-aggressive where it's helpful, but it's also derisive that here we go again. They're taking forever to get the play in. They're taking forever to line up. They're taking, the Broncos fans are smart. They're savvy. They know what they saw last week with all those struggles to get the play off. I've never heard of that happening in a football game where the home fans were counting down the play clock. Because when you do it in basketball, Miles, you're dribbling, you're moving, you're doing all that stuff. And I feel like Michael Scott now. When he's playing, when he's playing basketball, you're doing all this stuff. You're not looking up the play clock. When you're the quarterback, it's right in front of your face. You see it. You don't need help. It's amazing to me that this is happening.
Mike, you know what? I wanted to give Nathaniel Hackett the benefit of the doubt after what happened last week. Like, it's the first game, it's this and it's that. But Nathaniel Hackett seems overwhelmed by the moment right now. And we've talked about a lot of different teams. And, you can look at the Miami Dolphins and look at a first-time head coach who is not overwhelmed by the moment, who has had his team ready for pretty much every situation that they've been in so far. The Denver Broncos took 2 delay of game penalties on a field goal yesterday. On field goals. They had to call a timeout because they didn't have a returner back there for a punt. What is going on? This is day one stuff. And like I said, you can give him the benefit of the doubt for some of these things, but like, you need to be more prepared for the moment and you have to be able to rise to it. And like, I would have some concerns if I am the Penner Group that now owns the Denver Broncos about what's going on here. Because why are we making all of these procedural errors? Now, we can like laugh about the fact that the play clock's winding down and the home crowd is counting it out, but like, that's embarrassing. And you should not have that many concerns about taking a delay a game if you're a fan. So like, Nathaniel Hackett needs to really get in the lab and figure out what he has to do to be his best self on game day. Maybe it's not calling offensive plays. And like, I realize we're 2 games in on this, but you cannot be this overwhelmed by the moment as a head coach. You just can't.
This happens to no one else. There's no other team that struggles to get their plays selected, communicated,
it's ridiculous,
and executed. And let me tell you, there's a little deer in the headlights with Russell Wilson too. He's in the middle of all of this. At some point, he needs to take charge. Think about, and I know that this is not the best comparison. Richard Sherman was talking about this in the aftermath of the game last week, that Russell didn't have the power to call the timeout at the end of the game against the Seahawks, and Peyton Manning has that power. Well, Peyton Manning's pretty much the only one who has that power. It's not like
right.
It's not like, this is some barometer for quarterbacks who have greater authority, but at some point Russell does need to take charge. It does feel like he's not complicit, but helpless in all of this, that he's a bystander. He needs to be more than a bystander as Nathaniel Hackett drives this train off the cliff for the Denver Broncos. And I agree with you. The new owners are smart enough to see through the BS. We spent a lot of time last week talking about the BS that was coming from Nathaniel Hackett in the aftermath of the Monday night game, his clunky and clumsy efforts to explain it away. Greg Penner and Rob Walton are smart enough to see through it. They're going to be alarmed by this. What happened yesterday has to be alarming, Miles. And Nathaniel Hackett has to turn it around. This cannot be the theme all year long. If it is the theme all year long, he will be one and done.
Yeah. Look, they had an opportunity to kick a 59-yard field goal, and they didn't do it when they're at altitude. When last week you sent your kicker out as plan A for a 64-yard field goal in Seattle when you're not at altitude. These kinds of things are procedural process errors that make no sense and speak to how overwhelmed Nathaniel Hackett appears to be by the moment. And that's what I'm saying. You cannot have this stuff. If you are a head coach and you just got, this quarterback who's supposed to be there and be the future Hall of Famer, and you pay him a lot of money and it's this and it's that, like, you have to be able to get these simple, like, day one things correct. Otherwise, you're probably not going to be there for very long.
Hey, bottom line, it's the home opener in the regular season for new ownership and for Hackett and for Wilson, and they got booed. Here's Hackett after the game talking about the experience of getting booed by the home fans in his debut.
Crowd obviously frustrated at times, but can you just give me a sense of overall?
I don't blame them. I mean, heck, I was booing myself. I was getting very frustrated. Get down to the red zone 2 times, don't get another touchdown, which is unbelievably frustrating. I don't think we've scored in there yet, and that's something that all of our guys got to step it up. Whether we run the ball more, whatever we're doing, we just got to execute at a higher level.
I don't know how he communicates with ownership, but based upon the full body of the press conferences I've seen, I hope he's got a different style when he's across the table from Greg Penner, because I think that attitude, you're going to get written off pretty quickly, and they're going to start looking for who their next coach is going to be, whether it's Sean Payton or someone else. They're not going to wait around. They're not going to let this get too far out of hand before they just acknowledge the people who hired Nathaniel Hackett before we bought the team. They made a mistake, and we're going to rectify it. See, that's the thing. They've got no ego caught up in this, Myles. They didn't hire him. If he's not the guy, they're not going to double down and say give him time. They're just going to rip the Band-Aid off. They're not going to mess around, and they can afford the buyout. They can afford it. Walmart. Yep. Wait. Hang on a second. 1, 2. Walmart just made enough money to fund the buyout. There. Boom. It's over.
Yeah, exactly. And it's still, before opening time here on the East Coast, or excuse me, the West Coast, I should say. I don't even know where I am. But yeah, I don't think you should feel very good right now if you're like a Broncos fan about what's been put on the field in the first 2 weeks of the season. And take nothing away from Houston. They played well. They tried. They were out there. They get paid too, as we said about other teams. But it's just, like I said, it's the procedural process stuff where, I think the 49ers can go in there next week. And if the Broncos continue to have like the same sort of errors that they've had against teams like Seattle and Houston, the Broncos could get run out of the stadium, this could be something where the 49ers come in there and they blast them.
A couple of weeks ago, I did the Week 1 power rankings. I put the Broncos at 19. I had a lot of pissed off Broncos fans. I think they'd be happy right now. They were the most upset. The most upset. And I think they'd be happy right now to be 19. Yeah.
That's the thing, Mike. When you have a new quarterback, a new head coach, there's no guarantee that things are going to be all fine and dandy and rosy. Like, dude, people forget like what was going on in Seattle. It's not like Russell Wilson has been, the MVP of the league the last couple of years. I'm just saying. Never got an MVP vote, and probably won't get one this year. All right, let's take a break. When we return, the Packers got a win, but it wasn't all positive for Green Bay. We'll discuss that next on PFT Live. Hi, it's Mike Florio. Thanks for watching PFT on YouTube. Hit subscribe for the latest news and analysis from Pro Football Talk.